Landon, I think a lot of people were beginning to think you were a robot. You go out there and throw it by people, and you got knocked around a little bit out there in Hoover. I mean, you played baseball a long time, so days like that are going to happen. But, social media lights up, and everybody's like, oh, look what happened to Landon Sims. So how do you respond to that? What are your thoughts about all that?
Right when I walked past, the third base foul line right there, it kind of just left my brain. Baseball is a really, really, really tough sport. It's the most humbling sport in the world. So I know things are like that are going to happen. If I do happen to have a long career, that's probably going to happen 100 other times. So being able to deal with tough outings is a really big part of being a successful baseball player.
Kind of following up on that too, you've had those days before at some point, whether it be Little League or high school or whatever. How easy is it to flush that, or does it just make you that much more intense? So, I got to go out next time and really shut these guys down. I mean, I know there's that fire in you to do that, but how do you handle that?
I wouldn't really say it's easy to flush it, but it's a really bad thing to sit there and let it marinate. So I usually watch most of my outings back on the TV. And then, that last outing against Tennessee, I didn't even think about watching that one. And it was in the SEC tournament, so I think it was a really good time for that to happen. It was bound to happen at some point. But yeah, it's going to make me better down the stretch here in the postseason, and I'm ready to go.
We'll swing it over to Joel Coleman next, and we'll go to Robbie. Joel, go ahead.
Landon, we get to see that switch kind of flip for you when you go to the mound and in the late innings and things. And we were talking with Luke a minute ago about it. But for you, when does that switch flip? When do you go from a little bit laid back to that football mentality and that intensity that we see in the late innings? When's that moment come for you when that switch flips?
Usually I head down to the bullpen about the 5th or 6th inning during each game, and it starts to flip a little bit right there. And then, when they call down to the bullpen and tell me to start getting ready, that's when it really, really switches. And I got to go into that mentality of, it's me versus these guys, and I got to do what I got to do to hold the game where it's at and put us in the best spot to win.
And I guess, how do you channel that? Because I would think there's a point where you want to have that football mentality, you want to be intense, but out there with the season on the line in front of 15,000 folks this weekend, I would imagine you don't want to get too hyped.
Right.
I imagine that could be a problem too. How do you kind of channel that to keep from, I guess, going over the edge a little bit?
I don't know how many of y'all remember, but my first outing last year, in front of how many ever fans were there, I threw 11 pitches and I threw 9 strikes, or nine balls. I threw 2 strikes and 11 pitches, and Coach Lamonis came out there and pulled me. So in that situation, I was overhyped a little bit. Being a freshman, going out there in front of 10,000 people for the first time was a little bit overwhelming, as much as I don't want to admit it. But after that, I feel like I've done a really good job of, breathing and just trusting my catcher, trusting Coach Foxhall's pitch calling, and trusting my defense behind me, and let what happens happen.
Robbie, go ahead.
Landon, kind of talking about flipping the switch. I mean, you guys had a couple of days off after the SEC tournament, and you had to flip that switch back into preparation mode and getting ready for this regional. What have the last few days been like for you guys, and how focused do you feel like the team is heading into Friday's game?
I feel like we're really focused. We had 2 days to flush the SEC tournament. We were over and done with that as soon as we got on the bus to head back to Starkville. But those 2 days off, just to lay back a little bit. We lifted still, but we stayed off the field, and I think we're in a really good spot right now. We gotta come ready to play. These are 3 really, really good teams, and we can't take anything for granted here, and we gotta play really good baseball.
And you've kind of been through the ringer now in the SEC. I mean, you're not a freshman. You're not a freshman anyway. It's your second year, but first year in the SEC. This is going to be your first regional, and I know the big atmosphere hasn't bothered you at all, but how excited are you to get out there and pitch in a situation like this in front of this kind of atmosphere?
Since the day I committed here, back in my sophomore year of high school, I've just been watching these big moments unfold here in Starkville. In 19, the regional and the super regional got me real fired up for these situations, and being in those big situations here in a few days. That's what you come here for. You don't want to go anywhere else in the country and play in front of anybody else with anybody else.
We'll go back to Steve. Steve, go ahead.
Kind of piggybacking off that, Landon, you mentioned your first appearance, and it was kind of forgettable, I guess, for most people, but for you, you'll probably never forget that. But when you go out there for the first time in front of all these people, there's all these expectations. How much more important is to have those 13,000 people cheering for you instead of cheering against you? I mean, Mississippi State arguably has one of the best home field advantages in the country.
Yeah, that's huge for us, and we've talked about that. How hostile of an environment that it's going to be, playing in front of 12, 13, 14,000 people here in Starkville. It's not easy to do being the home team, but it's going to be even harder to do being the away team, especially for all of our fans cheering us on.
We've got time for a couple more for Landon. Again, utilize that raise your hand function. We'll go to Ellie. Ellie, go ahead.
Just with the talk about your guys' performance in the SEC tournament, just how motivating is it for you guys as a team, just based on what people have said about your guys' performance in Hoover? How much are you guys just trying to kind of prove everyone wrong, heading into regional play?
We try not to pay attention to what people say about us, whether it's good or bad. We like to stay pretty even keel right there. But we know we didn't play up to our standard, so that gives us a little bit more motivation. But now that that's over, we're looking forward to 2:00 tomorrow against Sanford.
We'll wrap it up with Landon with Steve. Steve, go ahead.
Landon, could it be a situation, too, where you guys can kind of flip the script a little bit? Maybe people are starting to doubt Mississippi State a little bit, whereas before, maybe a month ago, people were thinking, man, these guys are impossible to beat. Now, all of a sudden, do you think, maybe you can use this as a motivating factor heading into the postseason where perhaps, the loss could be a good thing, I guess? Yeah,
absolutely. Sometimes a few bad losses can turn around a season for a team. But it's do or die right here. We gotta play to our best every game, every inning, every pitch. So it's a little motivating, but we know what we can do, and if we play to our best ability, we know that we're a really tough team to beat.
We'll keep Landon for one more. Jay Walker, go ahead.
Thank you. Landon, let me get underneath your brim for a little bit. What position did you play in football?
I played safety in high school.
You miss it?
Yeah, I do a lot. I talk about it all the time about how much I miss it. It's a really fun sport. I said going into college there wasn't much that would beat Friday Night Lights, but I think playing in front of 12, 13,000 people at the Dude is pretty unbeatable.
Does that football background help you with the closer mentality? You're going on the road and the booze and all eyes on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Being a closer, you got to have a little bit of a mean mentality out there. Nobody's going to feel bad for you, and it's you against everybody else. So I like that. I like to bring a little bit of attitude onto the mound.
And last one, what's the better feeling, striking out the side or getting the pick six?
I think I only had one pick six in my football career, but striking out the side's a pretty good feeling.